On today's show, protest against war with Iran, a conservative state senator has his lawsuit thrown out, and we peer into the future, what to expect in Oregon politics in 2020. Welcome to Oregon News and Views from Social Advance. I'm Alan Zundel.
And I'm Charles Dunaway. Protests against American military actions toward Iran broke out around Oregon and in cities across the nation over the last week or so. These were in response to an American drone strike in Iraq that assassinated a top Iranian general. A couple hundred people rallied in Portland, and there were demonstrations in Eugene, Salem, and other locations. And on Wednesday, President Trump backed off from further actions after Iranian missiles struck American military bases in retaliation, apparently without any casualties.
And we have one follow-up item from last year's news. On Tuesday, a federal judge threw out a lawsuit filed by Republican State Senator Brian Boquist against legislative officers. Boquist had his access to the Capitol building restricted due to combative comments he made on the Senate floor and to news reporters in June. Tensions were high at the time over a second threatened boycott of floor sessions by Republicans, as well as Governor Brown's comments about using state troopers to bring the Republicans back. Here's what Boquist said in the Senate.
I understand the threats from members of the majority that you want to arrest me, you want to put me in jail with the state police, and all that sort of stuff. You don't think we haven't heard it directly from you? And media and the press, happy to meet with you afternoon and give the quotes. Happy to show you the rules one after the next have been violated. Let's not waste any time here. We're at the 11th hour. If you don't think these boots are for walking, you're flat wrong, Mr. President. And you send the state police to get me, hell's coming to visit you personally.
Boquist claimed that officers had violated his First Amendment speech rights, including religious speech and using the word hell. The judge rejected his arguments, remarking that Boquist's statement sounded more like a playground bully and, quote, resonate more as threats than the expression of theological ideas, end quote.
So what's ahead for Oregon politics in 2020? First of all, even-numbered years are when Oregon's state legislature, called the Legislative Assembly, holds its short session. The Assembly will convene on Monday, February 3rd, and is limited to a 35-day session unless two-thirds of both houses vote to extend. An extension, which has never happened, is limited to 5 days. Democratic legislators are already mapping out a difficult agenda. They hope to pass a climate crisis bill and campaign finance limits, both items which failed in last year's regular session, as well as other bills. And House Speaker Tina Kotek called this week for the Assembly to declare a homelessness emergency. She wants to allocate additional funding and relax zoning and permitting restrictions on the construction of emergency shelters. Oregon's Legislative Assembly met only once every 2 years until the short session was established by a state constitutional amendment in 2010. To keep things short, legislators are limited to the number of bills they can introduce, and there are strict deadlines for bills to pass the committees they're assigned to. Otherwise, the bills die. To prepare for February's session, interim committees will meet next week, and Oregon News and Views will be covering events as they develop.
In case you haven't heard, 2020 is also an election year. In just a few weeks, voters will begin the process of choosing the major party candidates for President of the United States. As of now, Donald Trump faces only token opposition for the Republican nomination, but the Democratic race is still wide open. And this year, Oregon's Democratic voters might actually make a difference in the outcome. As you can see on this chart, Oregon voters don't get a chance to weigh in until late in the process. In February, 4 states will hold primaries or caucuses, in which the leading candidates will try to cement their status as front runners. Then March 3rd is Super Tuesday, when another 14 states vote. Among them are some of the largest states, such as California and Texas. By that time, the current set of about 13 candidates will be whittled down considerably, leaving at most a handful still standing when the dust clears. Oregon's primary isn't until May 19th, and we won't get our mail-in ballots until the end of April. Normally, the race is effectively over before then. Whoever's in the lead usually has enough to pledge delegates to win the Democratic nomination at their national convention in July. But this isn't a typical year. There are an unusually large number of candidates with considerable popular support, as well as a couple of billionaires self-funding their campaigns. It's possible that no one candidate will have sewn it up by the time Oregon votes. Those voters who are registered Democrats may then have a rare opportunity to help determine the outcome of the nomination.
The only other political parties that run presidential candidates and have ballot access in Oregon are the Libertarian Party and the Green Party. As they don't qualify as major parties in Oregon, neither participate in the state-run May primary. Instead, they choose their nominees with processes that they each set up themselves. The Libertarian Party of Oregon has its board of directors choose delegates to their national convention, which is to be held in May. Delegates are not pledged to a particular candidate. Nominees for other public offices in Oregon will be chosen by paper ballots sent out to Libertarian Party members early in the year. The Pacific Green Party is Oregon's affiliate of the Green Party of the United States. They'll be choosing delegates to their national convention at a state convention in June. Oregon's delegates to that convention are usually pledged to a particular candidate. The party will also choose nominees for other public offices at its June state convention. The national convention will be held in July.
Major party candidates for other offices in Oregon are, of course, chosen by the party's voters in the May primary. At the federal level, one of our 2 U.S. Senate seats and all 5 of our seats in the U.S. House of Representatives are up for election. At the state level, the Secretary of State, Attorney General, Treasurer, over half of the state Senate, and all of the seats in the State House of Representatives are also up for election. The field of candidates for those seats is still taking shape. Candidates started filing as early as September of last year, but still have until March 10th to enter the primaries. If you want to vote in a major party's primary, you have to be registered with your party of choice by April 28th. So you still have time, but don't put it off too long. At the federal level, the primaries for all 5 of Oregon seats in the U.S. House of Representatives are getting interesting. In the 4 seats held by Democrats, the longtime incumbents are all being challenged by progressive candidates aligned with the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. In Congressional District 2, the only congressional seat held by a Republican, incumbent Greg Walden announced he is not running for re-election. This has drawn several candidates into the Republican primary and raised the stakes in the Democratic primary as they have the rare opportunity to seize an open seat. We'll be following these races for you on Oregon News and Views.
We'll also be following the primaries for the Legislative Assembly. As we explained in previous programs, seats in the Oregon legislature rarely change hands between the parties in the November elections. But what we haven't told you is that significant change in the legislature does happen in the primary elections. About a quarter of the members of the Legislative Assembly retire or otherwise leave office in every 2-year electoral cycle, so new faces replace old faces, even when the seats remain in the hands of the same party. And with new faces come new ideas, new priorities, and new views on old issues. So far, we count 5 of the 30 state senators and 11 of the 60 state representatives who will not be running for re-election this year. The primary races for those seats will be particularly worth watching.
Those are some of the things we'll be covering in 2020. The legislative short session in February, the major and minor primary races in the spring, and the general election races heading into November. Plus, who knows what else might happen. Even on this show, you can never tell. To find out, join us weekly for Oregon News and Views. Follow us on one of our social media accounts, or you can sign up for our email list on our website at socialadvance.org. Also, take a look at our new videos page on our website, where you'll find a link to an interview I did last Monday talking about Social Advance. Here's a short clip from that interview.
What do you mean by social justice? That's a word that's thrown around a lot by people. People don't even know what it means.
Yeah, well, people have to fill in the blanks of what that means. Justice means things being right. And so social justice is making society right, making it what it should be for all people. Yeah.
What should it be?
Well, it should be something that where people feel taken care of by each other. I think that's a human thing to do. And when people are not doing that, there's something wrong.
It seems there's something amiss in America because there's only two political parties.
I agree.
What are you going to do about it?
Well, that's the whole purpose of social advance was to try to find a way to get around the limitations of the two-party system.
Or if you've had enough of Alan, but not enough of me, you can tune into my podcast, A Wider View. My guest this week will be Catherine Shaktam of the London-based Next Century Foundation, and she is an expert on the Middle East and Shia Islam. She'll offer you an alternative view and context for this week's international crisis. The podcast can be found at widerviewradio.podbean.com and on YouTube, Apple, and Google Play. You can also find a link to it at the bottom of our videos page on the Social Advance website. Thanks for watching, and remember, you can look into the future, hoping good things come, but today is your real present.